Welcome to Train Signal. You're watching a lesson on configuring the distributed file system, or what's also sometimes known as DFS. Okay, so DFS is pretty much kind of what it sounds like, right? It's a distributed file system. It's the idea of taking your file shares that you make available out on your network and have them be distributed amongst many different servers. Okay, or we could say different file servers, or distributing them between the different file servers, right? So maybe you want to think of DFS as distributed file servers, right? It's still the same letters. It's not the official correct terminology, but it kind of makes sense. Now, in order to show this to you, I want to just kind of jump right into the Windows Server 2012 operating environment, and well, let's install it and set it up, see how this all works. Okay, now to get things started, we're going to actually have to work with a couple of different machines here. The one that I'm on right now is one that is called NYMem2. Okay, this is the second member server that I created in our globalmantics.local domain. I used it in one other lesson previously. We also have New York Mem1. Okay, which we had used for a number of other services, and just to kind of distribute the load a little bit of all these different services that we're putting in place, I wanted to have the two different member servers. But for this particular lesson, it's really important that we have the two member servers because, again, in order to truly show and demonstrate that we're distributing a file share, we need to have at least two servers to kind of share that load. So I'm going to start out on NYMem2, but I'm going to let you know that NYMem1 is also going to be used so that we can show the distributed load. Now, the first thing I want to show you is how to install DFS. And DFS is a role, so I'm going to go into the server manager. And also, similar to what we saw with the file server resource manager, DFS is actually a form of a role service. Okay, so once again, you won't find it by default when you go to add your roles and features. Okay, so when I click on add roles and features, it is going to be a role-based installation. I'll click next. I am going to do it on NYMem2, so I'll click next. And again, if I look under the D's, I don't see them here, right? I don't see it. It would be right here before DHCP, right? It'd be DFS. If I look at features, I don't see it here. Under our roles, if I expand file and storage services, and then from there expand file and iSCSI services, and scroll down, this is where I will see DFS namespaces and DFS replication. Aha! So what is the difference between these? Well, DFS namespaces enables you to group shared folders located on different servers into one or more logically structured namespaces. Okay, so this is the idea of having a single namespace that is going to distribute to different actual shared folder locations. Okay, so it is one thing I do want to install. And whenever I check that box, of course, it tells me there's other features. Basically, it's the RSAT tool that it wants to put in. So I'll click OK, add that feature. But then we have our DFS replication. And this is a multi-master replication engine. Okay, so multi-master meaning there is no one specific master copy. Okay, so it's a really cool multi-master. So you have multiple writable copies that allows you to go ahead and synchronize the folders on these different servers. Now, here's what's very cool about the whole idea of doing this. And that is, if we are going to have this replication between the different shared folders and the different locations. And by the way, you don't have to have the namespaces to do this. You could do just DFS replication. I could have a share on New York Member 2 and a share on New York Member 1, and I could go ahead and replicate those two folders, right? Synchronize them together. Okay, so it may be a situation where, let's separate it into different offices. Let's say I had New York Member 1, and then I also had another server out in our Chicago office for Chicago Member 1. The users in New York may always access the New York member server, and the Chicago users may always access the Chicago member server. but it might be the exact same data. So we go ahead and put in DFS replication to synchronize those two folders. Okay, so that is, in the past, DFS is not new. It's been around for a long time. But in the past, you didn't have as much of a breakdown between the two, or at least it wasn't as obvious. It was a little bit more difficult to understand. It was kind of all one thing. It was just called DFS. Now, we can truly break it down and kind of make a choice. So we have our DFS namespaces, and I'm going to show you all this, by the way. Once it's installed, if this is still confusing to you, I'm going to show it to you. But we have our namespaces, which is where we can create a single namespace that would represent both of those shared folders, right? Both locations, all as a single namespace so that everybody in the entire company all points to the same place. But then we also have the replication, which is where we can go ahead and have the same information duplicated in two different locations. Now, speaking of data duplication, there is another feature here, and we're not going to go into it in detail here, but it's data deduplication, or what some people just call dedupe for deduplication. And the idea here is where you might have, and you can only do this on non-system volumes, but if you have other storage volumes out there, one of the issues that we run into is users who are saving another copy of the exact same file. And if you want to eliminate that, okay, you want to eliminate that wasted storage space because you have multiple users keeping, let's say, the same copy of a file, or I should say a copy of the same file in, let's say, their own local or their own directory, right? On a shared file server, everybody has their own folder that they can store stuff in, and they each have their own copy. Well, that's using up a lot of space when just doing multiple copies of the exact same file. So there's the dedupe process that we now have through this particular role service here. This data deduplication. That's always hard for me to say. That's why dedupe is easier for me. But the data deduplication feature is how you can go ahead and deal with that. But I'm getting kind of off subject here. Let's come back to DFS. If I check the box for DFS replication, that means that this server is going to also participate in the replication of shared folders in more than one location. So I will go ahead and click on Next, and I will click Next again because we don't need any additional features, and Install. And at this point, it's going to go through and it's going to begin the installation of DFS. Now, while it's installing, I want to actually do a little bit to prepare to make DFS work. So we're going to let this go ahead and run in the background. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my start screen here and just go into my computer, go into my C drive. Here I have a folder that I had already created in another lesson called Documents, and I believe it should be empty. Yeah, if I go in there, it is empty, and that's what I wanted. But what I did not do in the other lesson that I do want to do now is I want to go ahead and share that folder. So I'm going to go into the Properties, click on Sharing, go to Advanced Sharing. And I know you don't have to do this when you're sharing a folder. There are faster ways where you could just say share this folder. I'm kind of an old school. I like using the old advanced sharing. I'm going to say to go ahead and share this folder as the share name Documents. That's fine. And for permissions, I want to make it that everyone has full control. And just to make sure that everyone does have full control, let's go to the Security tab, or at least the users, and let's edit, and let's make it that the users also have full control. I know that's not everyone, but that'll satisfy everybody that we need, right? That's going to be all of our domain users. And quite frankly, I'm only logged in as administrator, so I would have had full control anyway. But the point is I just want to make sure I have a folder here that I've made it that everybody has full control access to. Then from there, for just a moment, I'm going to jump over to New York Mem 1. Okay, so let's go over there now. Over here on New York Mem 1, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to go to the computer, and I'm going to go to my C drive, and I'm going to create a new folder called Documents. Obviously, it's an empty folder because I just created it. I am going to go to its properties, and I'm going to share it. going to do all the exact same stuff. Share it, and I'm going to give everyone full control. And go to the security tab. Make sure all the users have full control. Okay. Now there is something else we're going to need to do on New York Mem 1, but I'm going to specifically hold off because I want you to see it fail and understand why, and then we'll go ahead and we're going to add something else to New York Mem 1. So let's jump back over to New York Mem 2 and see how we're doing. All right, back here on New York Mem 2, let me close out of this window. This was what I was hoping for, is at this point it says that the installation has succeeded. Now if you're following along and yours has not succeeded, pause this lesson at this point and resume once you have completed this process. At this point we're going to close this window, and I'm going to go up to the Tools menu, DFS Management, and then here we have namespaces, and I just want to show you that if I go to expand it, it doesn't expand because of course there's nothing there, right? And then we have replication, which also is currently blank. And the reason is because, well, nothing's been set up yet. I just installed the capability to do DFS. So what I need to do is I need to right click on namespaces and say that I want to create a new namespace. Okay, so the idea here is I'm going to create just a name, right? A shared name, basically, that can be accessed from anywhere throughout the network, and it's not specific to a server. It will take us to what could be one of many servers that are storing the information. So here it says enter the name of the server that will host this particular namespace, and there's only one server that can host this namespace, and that's New York Mem 2, right? The server that we installed the DFS namespace capability. So let's go ahead and browse, and I'll type in New York Mem, check names. I see 1 and 2, so I'll select New York Mem 2. And I'll click Next. Now enter the name for this particular namespace. Okay, and so this is the name that will appear after the server or domain. And so, in other words, what they're saying is, what's the shared name that you want to do? And I'm going to do DFS Demo. Okay, so this is my actual shared namespace. I will click Next. Here I get to choose whether it is going to be a domain-based namespace or a standalone namespace. And you'll see here that a standalone namespace is one that is stored on a single namespace server, and you can increase the availability only by using it in a failover cluster. Okay, so that would be if I wanted to point it specifically and have all users always pointing to NYMEM2 DFS demo. That's not what we want here. We want to use a domain-based namespace, so that way it's a name that is specific to the domain regardless of server. The example here is it'll end up being globalmantics.local/DFS demo. Okay, this way users anywhere throughout the domain, they don't have to remember the names of servers. They only have to know the name of the domain and then the shared name. Now this checkbox for enabling Windows Server 2008 mode, right here it says, when created in this mode, the namespace supports increased scalability and more specifically something called access-based enumeration, which basically means you only see stuff if you have access to it, as opposed to seeing something you don't have access to and then getting an access denied message. And basically these are features that only began becoming available in Windows Server 2008. Okay, so the idea here is by enabling Windows Server 2008 mode, without enabling it, you're supporting older than 2008. You're supporting Windows Server 2003, Windows 2000, okay, servers that go further back. If you know that you're using Windows Server 2008 and newer, we can enable this mode and get more features and functionality. Now, let's go ahead and click on Next and Create. And what we hope for here is we hope that we don't get any errors. Hey, look at that. We got a nice green circle with a check mark in it. It says that we successfully created the namespace. So I will close this window, and you will see that I now have a namespace. So now that we have a namespace here, right, we actually have this globalmantics.local DFS demo. We need to put stuff in it. Okay, so I'm going to right-click and say New Folder. And we're going to go ahead and call this Documents. Okay, and keep in mind that this is why I created those document shares on the two servers for this exact demo right here. Because right down here it says Folder Targets. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to add in, and I'm going to browse to NYMem2, and here it shows me all my shares, which there's documents. Here's DFS demo because that's that namespace share that we created. Okay, but now we want to put something in that. So here are documents. That's the share that we had created. All right, and then let's add, and let's change NYMem2 to NYMem1. I'll just click check names. There's NYMem1. And you'll see there's a bunch of shares out on that server because we had done a whole bunch of other things with other lessons. But here's that documents share. So I'll click OK to that. And so what we're basically saying here is we're going to put in a folder called documents inside that DFS demo share. And that folder will point to these two locations. Now I'm going to tell you right up front that we're gonna actually run into a problem here, right? We're going to run into an error here. I want to let you know this up front because remember I said NYMem1 needs something else, but I want you to see the error first. So I'm going to click OK, and it says that a replication group can be used to synchronize these targets, right? And that's what we want, right? We want the same stuff to appear in both folders. So I'll say yes. Go ahead and do that. Uh-oh, we got an error. Why? Because DFS replication was not installed on NYMem1. Okay, we don't have DFS installed in any capacity, so we can't participate as a replication group unless we have DFS replication installed. So let me click OK. And let's go ahead and jump over to NYMem1 and add that in now. So back here on NYMem1, let's go into our server manager, and I'm going to go through this very quickly because it's the exact same steps that we already saw on NYMem2. We're going to add roles and features. Next. Next. Expand our file and storage services. Expand our file and iSCSI services. Now in this case, I'm just going to show you we're not going to do DFS namespace. Okay, we're not worried about the namespaces. Those are being hosted on New York Mem2. We are, however, going to do DFS replication. And it wants me to do the matching RSAT tool. That's fine. Add that in, click next, next, and install. And this will take just a few moments to get installed. And while it does, let's jump back over to NYMem2. I want to do one other thing just real quick here to help get things set up. Back over here on NYMem2, let's go ahead and jump back into our documents folder because I want to do something here. I want to put a document in here, and we'll just call this demo doc, and let's go into it and say this is an example of DFS. Close it, save it. All right, so just to show you, I'll open it back up. Example of DFS. Okay, good. The reason I want to put that in there is because you're going to see that when we first set up replication, you need to pick a master, okay, or it's actually called a primary, and it's the one that it will take the documents from and replicate them over if you have stuff in there. But let's go ahead and let's check on NYMem1 and see if it's done installing the role. Okay, back here on NYMem1, you'll see here it says installation has succeeded. Again, if you're following along and yours has not, then pause the lesson right now until it is done. But at this point, we're going to go ahead and click on close. I don't need my server manager anymore, so I'm going to close out of there. I will quickly jump over here to my C drive and the documents folder just to show you that it is still empty. Now let's jump back over to NYMem2. All right, here on NYMem2, here's what I want to do. You see this documents? It still went ahead and it created this, but it just didn't create the replication. So we could go ahead and manually set up the replication, but here's what I want to do. If you're really doing this the right way, you should have had stuff in place, and you should know what you're doing. So I'm going to actually delete this folder. Now I'm not actually deleting the folders themselves or the shares. What it's doing is, and you'll see it says will not delete the shared folders or the actual targets themselves. You're just deleting the folder inside your DFS share. So yes, I want to do this. And the reason I wanted to do it is because now I want to right click on my DFS demo share and add a folder. And do everything that we were just doing a few moments ago, right? Called it documents, add the targets. I'm just going to type them in this time. I'm not even going to do the whole search through, right? There's NYMEM2 documents. The only danger in typing it in this way is if you have a typo, right? Then you're going to get an error. So I'm going to hope that I can type without making a mistake. And it's always the word documents that I mess up on, but I think I got it right here. We have those two there, and let's go ahead and click OK. And again, it says, hey, this might be a good place to do a replication group. And I'll say, yeah, I want to do that. So I click yes. And now I get the replication group and replicated folder name, or really it's the replicate folder wizard. Now, you do realize I could have also, and I'll show you this, I could have also just gone straight to replication and created this manually, right? Because I already technically had that folder in place. I just wanted to see that you could do this all in one shot. So here's the name, right? globalmantics.local DFS demo documents, and we're going to call it, the folder name is actually just documents. So I'll click next. Here are the two that are going to be replicated. Click next. This is where you pick your primary member. Okay, meaning which server has the content that you actually want replicated. And we're going to say New York Mem 2 has the content, right? It has that file in it that says this is an example of DFS. I'll click next. You get to pick an actual replication topology, so you can use hub and spoke, which is grayed out because if I only have two members, there's no hub and there's no spoke. And you'll see it says you have to have 3 or more, so that's why it's grayed out. I can do a full mesh, which is everybody replicates with each other, or you could do no topology if you just want to create your own manual custom replication topologies and get real sophisticated with this after the fact. So we'll go ahead and do full mesh, which makes sense when you only have 2, right? They both replicate with each other. Click next. And we get some additional stuff we can do about scheduling and bandwidth. Okay, as far as, assuming you might be doing this over a WAN link, right? And it could be from one office to another. You may need to actually manage how much of your bandwidth is being used, manage, what quantity of bandwidth you're using, and then also maybe replicate during just a specific schedule, maybe during off hours. So those are the types of things you can also do, which I'm not going to worry about here because these are two virtual machines sitting on a LAN with each other, so there's no big deal. Click next and create. And again, we hope for a lot of successes. And hey, how about that? Green all over the place. I love it. So I'm going to go ahead and close this. Now it tells me that there could be a replication delay. You just have to keep in mind that it does rely on Active Directory domain services, okay, for its replication latency. So depending on the size of your enterprise, there could be a delay in replication. I'm hopeful in my case here that this should be essentially instantaneous. So I'm going to click OK. And to see if it indeed was instantaneous, well, first, let's just confirm. If I, here on NYMEM2, if I jump over to my documents folder, I still have demo doc, and it still says this is an example of DFS. And then what I want to do is jump over to NYMEM1. So here on NYMEM1, let's go ahead and let's see if we got lucky, see if it happened right away. Go into my documents folder. Uh-oh, it did not happen right away. So this can take a few minutes. I can tell you right now that if we were to sit and wait for 5 minutes, this would get replicated. I can also tell you that if we go into DFS replication, I believe we can even go into Active Directory sites and services for replication. We can force replication to take place. But I'd like to do some other things. And while we're doing this stuff, I have a feeling that this replication will take place so that you can see it. All right, I'm not going to worry about that for right now. What I do want to do is I'm going to actually jump over to a client. Okay, so here we are over on our Windows 8 client, right? We can see here it's Win8 Client 1. This is nothing more than a Windows 8 computer that I have installed and joined to the globalmantics.local domain. I just want to show you that if I click Start and then type in /globalmantics, if I could type, here we go, globalmantics /DFS demo. Okay, I didn't have to know the actual name of any servers or anything else. The name of my domain is globalmantics. Notice, by the way, I did not need the .local. I just needed the NetBIOS name. So globalmantics /DFS demo. When I hit enter, look at that. It takes me into a share that then has a folder called documents. When I go into that documents folder, I get a document called demo doc. And if I open that up, it says this is an example of DFS. Now what I'd like to try to do, and let's see if I have the privileges to do it, is, let's see here, this is a change of DFS. Let's close it, save changes. All right, I did have privileges because it's saved. And if I open it up again, all right, this is a change of DFS. Now, notice I don't know what server I'm on, right? I don't know if I'm looking at NYMem1 or NYMem2. I have no way of knowing. Notice I could have gone into those shares directly, right? If I put in NYMem2 and then put in documents, I still get that demo doc by going directly into NYMem2. Notice, by the way, that change is there. Now this is the big replication moment to see if it actually works. If I were to jump into NYMem1 documents, if I could type here, here we go, documents. Aha! So far so good. On that particular server, I do now see demo doc in that folder. Ooh, and I even got the change. It all replicated. All right. So do you get the idea there? You get the idea that I'm a client, and even though I could have gone specifically to NYMem1 or NYMem2, those shares both exist, I didn't have to. As a client, all I need to know is that I go to globalmantics and the name of the share, and then it takes me to all my shared folders that are available, and I don't care what servers they're on. It doesn't matter. It can all be managed from the one central location. Now, just to real quick finish proving, just to make it real obvious that this stuff has replicated, let's jump over to NYMem1 and NYMem2 and look locally and see what we see. All right, back here on NYMem1, you'll see I still had my documents folder open just to show you exactly where I am. Here's my C drive, documents, here's demo doc. If I open it, this is a change of DFS. And then if we jump over to NYMem2, here on NYMem2, we'll go ahead and go into the computer and into the C drive, documents, demo doc. This is a change of DFS. So it worked. It's in all locations. So you see how that works. I have my namespaces. That's so that people don't have to remember the names of the servers. Inside the namespace, I have the actual share. It shows me what servers. Okay, under replication, you'll see that we now have that particular, if I expand this out, let me blow this up and expand it out. We can see that this is the documents folder inside that DFS demo. Again, here's our membership. All right. So that's pretty much how it all works. That's, DFS is a pretty cool thing, and where this really comes in handy is it comes in handy when you have users in multiple offices where they would typically, if you just had like one file server, let's say in New York, and you had your users out in Chicago and in Dallas, and globalmantics also has an office out in Tokyo. So now you're going completely out of the country, around the world, and Tokyo, trying to connect to that file server out in New York. Sometimes that can be a problem, and it might be slow for users. So it's a great opportunity to go ahead and create a file server out in Tokyo that has a replica of this information, and you can control the replication of that data to that replica, which is really awesome. Okay, so, and oh, by the way, the other thing that'll happen is there is, and again, I don't want to go outside the scope of what we're talking about here, but on top of that, I can tell you that there are records that are created as a part of sites and subnets and DNS and everything else, to where a user, when they are sitting at a client computer out in Tokyo and they go to the globalmantics /DFS demo share, guys, and they don't know what server they're going to, it will actually take them to the server that is most accessible to them, typically the one that is closest to them, so that if you had that replica out in Tokyo with the client, That's where they're going to get it from so that it's very quick. And that's how DFS works. So that's pretty much all I have for you in this lesson. I look forward to seeing you in the next one.